Hello, this is vlog number 3. I'm Mohamad Alsharif, and it's for guest speaker Grant Miller. So the topic he talked about was evolution of distributed computing and how it changed in the last 20 years. So the first slide he talked about was what are the problems that we are trying to solve in terms of how much the cost and how what's the size of the software that we're trying to do and things like that that you need to focus on before starting to develop the program. So he showed us how an application, a software looked maybe 10 years ago, I believe, and it looked jagged all over the place, and how every single box in that diagram was an application by itself. And it took a lot of time to look after and to even develop because it took 18 months nearly, and it had to be looked after on a constant basis. So then he showed a logical layer, and that's the way we used to develop a program. There were 3 layers, and it was called the SOA, service-oriented architecture. And each layer, it didn't need to focus on the layer below it to know what it needs to do, which was an important thing to develop, but it still was complex to look after, and it took a lot of time to develop. So then he showed us the API-centric system, where it made things so much easier to develop and so much quicker, and not needing people to look after the system as much as the previous ones, which was a very important step in the right direction. And what made that possible was the use of microservice, which we went through in the last with the last guest speaker, and he talked about it in detail and how important it was to develop that into an API-centric system. So he showed us a RESTful API structure, but he never talked about it. He just showed us. But he went into talking about how the world we live in is a hybrid world, and everything goes around very quickly. And an example of that was IoT, Internet of Things. And the example of his house, where the air conditioning, the air conditioner would be adjusted based on the temperature in the house, and things like the door. He can open it while he's outside the house through his phone and things like that, and many other things in the house that can be used through Internet of Things because it's connected to every device in the house. An example was also of Alexa and Google. So he showed us a comparison as well between how it used to be a traditional centralized system and Internet of Things, and how big difference in terms of control and application and the architecture was different, because in IoT's case you didn't need to control every single application to make the system work. You just took what you need from the cloud and you made it work. And he gave us an example of a tractor, where first the tractor works and then it is connected, and until the 5th step where it's a system part of a system. He showed us the type of devices that you can play with, from the Intel Edison, Raspberry Pi, Arduino, and Dragon Board. And his device that he worked on was Raspberry Pi, through the use of Twitter, which he showed us how it worked through the use of Node, where he took nodes of the that he needed to make his program work without needing to do it himself, which made the process of doing the application much more quicker. He showed us the code samples, but he didn't go through it. But he also went into why do we care in terms of security, because it's very important nowadays to know that using these types of systems, will you be cracked or not. So the security was very important. He showed the evolution and where to next, and then how important was capturing data, because it was the next step. And why is that? Because he showed in terms of where to store data, and from system into many other aspects as well, But the next step was deep learning and the system learning what to do instead of implementing the steps that you want the system to do. You want it to learn and to make decisions, which was very important for the future. And that would be going back to IoT and implementing that aspect of deep learning into IoT. And that's where he ended the presentation after before the Q&A. Thank you.